Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I thought might as well have a little bit of a discussion about the Tory party conference so far. Yesterday went on a little bit of a walk to try and demonstrate against the Conservative policies. Turns out we weren't allowed anywhere near the conference centre. But, you know, I don't know what trouble they were expecting from the protesters, but they certainly got it inside. Because before I kick everything off, we could link this a little bit with the Labour Party conference. Now, one thing that I was bemoaning there was the infighting. It's almost like the Conservatives, or at least one Conservative MP said, "You call that infighting? I'll show you some infighting." And there then ensued today a fist fight between a Tory MP, one Sir Geoffrey Clinton Brown, and the treasurer of the 1922 committee. A fist fight. The police had to be called and the Tory MP had to be removed from the Tory party conference centre. Oh, but don't forget, this is the party of law and order. The same party, of course, that thinks it's fine to unlawfully suspend Parliament and then when they've found to be acting unlawfully, refuse to apologise. They've got nothing to apologise for, they say. But this brings me on to the next most spectacular lie. I mean, the first thing wasn't really a lie, it was just a fight, wasn't it? But there's been a number. What's been happening a lot at the Tory party conference, there's been a lot of policies announced, but when you actually listen to what they're saying, but then look at what's written down, it's very different. It's very different. And what I always say about modern conservatism, if you look at other parties, they'll announce a policy and they mean it. They actually want to bring that policy in. Sometimes they don't always think it through. Sometimes they don't really have the detail in terms of how they'll exactly do it. But they're genuine about the policy. The Conservatives are not. They say they're going to do one thing, they'll actually do another. So, for example, Robert Buckland announced that the most serious violent and sexual offenders will not get automatic early release at the halfway point of their sentence. Something, of course, that resonates with much in the public. There was a survey announced by YouGov saying that 70% of people would agree with this policy. The problem is that it assumes that the most serious violent and sexual offenders get automatic release halfway through their sentence. They don't. They don't get any form of release halfway through their sentence. These are the most serious violent and sexual offenders. Of course, we don't just let them tick off the days and then walk out of prison. That doesn't happen right now. All such criminals will always serve a minimum of 2/3 of that sentence. And even then, there is never an automatic release. They are only ever released when they are deemed to be safe. Doesn't even matter if they get to the end of that sentence. Makes no difference. They are only ever released when deemed to be safe, and that can never happen at the halfway point. Ever. So the whole thing is based on a lie. So in actual fact, to put into place the policy that the Conservatives talked about today, what do they actually need to do? The answer is sweet FA, because that's not the situation that exists as they've described it. Not that it matters, of course. What's the point of talking about sentencing when the Conservative government are not funding our courts? We've had a situation for some time where courts are standing empty. I follow a few senior barristers. They're on a daily basis bemoaning the fact that judges are bemoaning the fact that court cases are not going ahead. It's not that the penal system is under such pressure and the judiciary system is under such pressure that we can't do this. It's not. We've got courts standing empty. We've got the judges to go and sit in those courts, but they're not doing, because the government are not paying for those courts to be open. They're still having to pay for the judges, whether those judges are sitting on that day or not, but they're obviously saving money on lots of other costs. So if you're not even going to put these people on trial, then you're not going to get a conviction, are you? And if you're not going to get a conviction, there's not going to be a sentence. So what does it matter what the sentence is anyway? It's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Then we'll come on to what I would say is the boldest lie. This is what kicked off the Tory party conference. It's quite incredible. So the news first of all came out. Boris Johnson saying, "My government is going to build 40 new hospitals." You what? A Conservative government building a hospital, let alone 40. When has that ever happened? Doesn't happen. 40 new hospitals. The problem was that that was such an obvious and outrageous lie that even the BBC very quickly had to change their headline and announce what it really was. Incredible to me that they ever reported it in the first place, because straight away something like that is said, you know that's not true. You know no Conservative government is going to build hospitals. So you read the actual fine print. What they're actually talking about. Not building any new hospitals. What it actually is they're going to refurbish 6 hospitals. And I don't mean build 6 new hospitals. We're not going from we're going to build 40 hospitals to we're going to build 6. We're not going to build any. He's going to refurbish, which for all I know is a lick of paint. 6 hospitals. Now, where are these 6 hospitals, I hear you say? Are they the most 6 in need hospitals in the country? No, that would be silly. These are 6 hospitals in marginal constituencies. The marginal constituencies that the Conservative Party have researched and determined that if they do something nice for the local hospital, there might be some votes in it. And it's a marginal constituency. Of course, the money will never be spent. Remember, this is the same Boris Johnson who just a few weeks ago promised an extra £2 billion in extra spending for the NHS. And when pressed, it turned out that actually it was 0 extra pounds for the NHS, because the money he was talking about was already in the system. The NHS just hadn't been allowed to spend it, but it was already there, already allocated, already been pulled out of the public funds. It was there, not new money. This will be the same. It's just, that's the problem, isn't it, as well, with a pre-election promise? How can you be sure? If you're going to vote based on a pre-election promise, how can you ever be sure they're going to follow through on it? They won't, will they? And what's a refurb? Because a refurbishment can literally mean anything. Like I've said, a little bit of paint on the railings can be a refurbishment. Could be anything. Doesn't mean anything, does it? I feel sorry for people who would actually change their vote based on this, based on the fact that their local hospital is going to get a refurbishment, because such a person must have their lives blighted by conmen. They're such a target, if that is the case. Really is. And the other thing, well, while we're on the subject of Boris Johnson, he had suggested, and of course got the Tory media on this, that the Benn Act was drafted with help from the EU. He was saying all these traitor opposition MPs got the EU to help them with the Benn Act. Now, when pressed about this, he said there's no evidence for this, but the question has to be asked. But he wasn't asking a question. He was slandering MPs. He was saying this as if it was a statement of fact. And here's the other thing. Doesn't even make sense. The Benn Act required 2 things. First of all, it was legislation in British law. Second of all, it needed to be pushed through Parliament very quickly. So what areas of expertise do you need for that? Oh, you need an expert in British law. Do you get a lot of those in Brussels? Really? Because I'm going to guess the only ones in Brussels that are experts in British law are British lawyers. And those are the people they were consulting in Britain. They're British. The second thing is you need people who are experts in Westminster parliamentary procedures to get it through Parliament really quickly. Well, the very MPs who drafted this and pushed it through are those people. They are the experts. They've done it before and they'll do it again maybe. They're not to be found in Brussels. So it doesn't even make sense. You have to be a bit dim to even think that it would be a possibility, to say nothing of the fact, as I say, there is 0 evidence. And of course there's 0 evidence because it didn't happen. Because it makes no sense to happen. Then Sajid Javid, the Treasurer, Chancellor of the Exchequer, said that there's going to be an increase in the living wage. Not even going to bother to tell you how much it's going to go up because it doesn't matter. Because in the fine print, in the actual documentation, it says that it is subject to the right economic conditions. Now, call me a cynic if you will. I am going to strongly suspect that for the Conservative government, the economic conditions will never be right for this living wage increase, especially as their main policy is to continue knackering our economy. The economic conditions are not going to be right for anything before long. Then we come on to the party chairman, James Cleverly, clearly trying to win the award for dumbest statement at conference. came out with a couple of blinders. First of all, he tried to say that the Conservatives founded the NHS. Yes, that's what he said. Now, for those who don't know, the NHS was founded by a Labour government post-Second World War. Now, I will grant you this. Just because a particular party's in government when something good is done doesn't necessarily mean it's their creation if it had general cross-party support. Classic example, Good Friday Agreement. Technically it came in during the Labour government, but in actual fact it was started off by the previous Conservative government. It had cross-party support throughout the entire process. It's based, I mean, it wasn't even just the British government, of course, the Irish government, parties in Northern Ireland, even America got involved. You know, it was a collaborative effect, but you wouldn't call that a Labour creation. But the NHS was, and the reason why you can say that is not just because it was a Labour government that was in power when it was enacted, but the Conservatives voted against it. Every time some legislation was required, the Conservatives voted against it every single time. So on what basis is James cleverly trying to suggest that it's a Conservative construction? He said, actually, I think if you'll look, you will find that there was a Conservative MP who voted in favour of it. So, it was a Labour government in charge. It was part of their manifesto. They did it. All the Conservative MPs, bar one, apparently, voted against the creation of the NHS every time it came up. But because that one MP, that one Tory MP, against their entire party, rebelled and voted in favour of it, apparently that makes it a Conservative creation. We have been schooled. Oh dear. And then the other one he claimed that in modern times the Conservative Party has never had a larger membership than it does now. Except you don't have to go that far back before it was significantly larger. In fact, as might be expected, it was much larger than it is now whilst it was in opposition, while Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were in government. Because, I mean, you expect that, don't you? You expect a party to gain more support when it's in opposition. And then when it's in government, you usually get a few people leaving, especially when they become a bit dissatisfied with how that party's performing in government. Not unusual there. So yeah, another really obvious and easy to check out lie. And it's a bit of a dumb thing to say anyway. Why would you, even if it were true, which it isn't, even if it were true, why would you big up Conservative Party membership? Because by doing so, their current party membership is about 191,000. It immediately asks you to draw the comparison with their main rivals, Labour. Labour have just about 475,000, a little shy of 500,000. Now, why would you talk about Conservative Party membership size when immediately someone's going to compare it to Labour and say, are you aware that Labour have well over double the number of members that the Conservative Party has? What a ridiculous thing. However, I'm going to have to say, I mean, James cleverly, I think, exists. His entire role in life, I said this at work today, James Cleverly's entire role in life is to prove nominative determinism to be utter bollocks. But I don't think he gets the award for dumbest statement at conference, because I've heard a dumber one. Esther McVeigh. Now I have to read this out to you. This is what she said. We will lead the world because our architects are designing on computers and in 3D. That's a statement from a cabinet minister. So we're going to lead the world because our architects design on computers, as if architects elsewhere design with Lego first and then just go, here you go, let's build this. And in 3D. I mean, I have to relay what someone on Twitter said about this. Oh yes, I'm sick of living in these 2D houses. I mean, really, I don't even know what she's trying to say, and I can't be bothered to try and find out. But that, for me, has to be the dumbest statement at conference so far. But anyway, there is my brief relay. I don't intend to do any more of these. If they say a load more stupid things, then maybe I'll have to. But I hope you found the video interesting anyway. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.